Most people quit at level 2, not because the work gets harder, because they misread what's actually happening to them, and by the time they figure it out, they've already rage quit the whole game convinced it was rigged from the start. Here's the part nobody tells you when you start an AI agency. You don't start at level 1, you start at level 0. No clients, no case studies, no proof you can do the thing you're telling strangers on LinkedIn you can do. You are, functionally, a rumor about yourself. Level 1 is $0 to your first dollar, and it looks nothing like the reals. You're not closing $10,000 retainers from a beach in Tulum. You're DMing 40 business owners a day, most of whom think AI means the chatbot that ruined their last customer service call. You land your first client for $500. Maybe $800 if you're aggressive with the pitch. It's custom work, built from scratch, no template, no system, just you and 11 browser tabs open at 1 a.m., trying to figure out why the automation keeps double booking the same calendar slot. You are, at this stage, a freelancer wearing an agency's name like a costume that doesn't fit yet. And that's fine. That's supposed to happen. Level 1 exists to teach you the market with real money on the table instead of theory. What people will actually pay for. What they say they want versus what they'll sign a check for. What breaks in the delivery that never showed up in the sales call. This is the level where you're not scaling anything. You're gathering intel disguised as invoices. The trap shows up right after your third or fourth client, once the money starts feeling real. $2,000 a month, $3,500 a month. It feels like winning. It's actually a fork in the road disguised as progress, because now you have a choice nobody frames correctly for you. Stay a highly paid freelancer forever, trading hours for dollars in a slightly nicer font, or start building something that doesn't need you personally chained to every deliverable. Most people don't choose. They just keep saying yes to more custom work until they've built themselves a very stressful job with client-facing Slack channels instead of an agency. You can make 6 figures this way. You can also burn out completely inside 18 months because a freelancer's ceiling isn't set by how good you are. It's set by how many hours exist in a week you're willing to sacrifice. Level 2 is where the agency actually starts. $1,000 to $10,000 a month, and the entire level is really just one decision played out 100 small times. Stop building custom, start building repeatable. Instead of I'll design whatever AI solution your business needs, it becomes I install a lead qualification system for real estate agencies, and here's exactly what it includes. Same skill, completely different business. One is a service. The other is a product wearing a service's clothes, and that distinction is the whole game at this level. This is also where your first real systems show up, not because you read a productivity book, but because you have no choice. You onboard your 4th client and realize you've explained the same 3 things 4 separate times in 4 separate ways, and one of those explanations was wrong, and now you're fixing a mess you already fixed once. So you build the SOP, the onboarding doc, the scope of work template you actually reuse instead of rewriting from scratch every single time. None of this is glamorous. It's the unpaid, invisible labor that separates an agency from a guy with a nice website. A freelancer solves problems. An agency solves the same problem repeatedly at increasing speed without the founder personally present for the 5th, 6th, and 50th time. Here's the expensive mistake almost everyone makes at exactly this level, and it's not a marketing mistake. It's a pricing and paperwork mistake, and it's quiet enough that you won't feel it for months. You underprice because you're still thinking like a freelancer proving yourself, and you skip a real contract because the client seems nice and scope creep seems like a problem other people have. Then a $1,500 project turns into 4 rounds of can you also add this, unpaid, because you never defined what done meant on paper. You did roughly 40 hours of work for what breaks down to $11 an hour. And you don't even notice because you're too busy calling it building relationships. Multiply that across every client at this level, and you've built an agency that's technically growing in logo count and shrinking in actual profit. That gap is invisible on your revenue screenshot and very visible in your bank account 9 months later. Think of the whole climb from here as levels in a game, because that's genuinely the most accurate map of it. Each level has a different boss, a different skill you're missing, and a different way the same mistake will bankrupt a slightly bigger version of you if you don't catch it now. Level 1 and 2 teach you the market and the offer. What comes next is where it stops being about you entirely and starts being about whether you can build something that survives you not showing up. Level 3 starts the moment you hit $10,000 a month and realize something uncomfortable. You can't do this alone anymore, and you don't actually know how to stop doing everything alone. You've been the sales guy, the strategist, the implementer, the support ticket, and the invoice reminder for over a year now, and the business has quietly become a hostage situation where you're both the hostage and the guard. So you hire, usually badly, the first time, a virtual assistant for $6 an hour to handle onboarding emails. A contractor off Upwork who says he knows Make and Zapier inside out and turns out to know exactly one automation template he's rebuilt for every client he's ever had. You're not building a team yet, you're outsourcing panic. But it works, sort of, because even a mediocre first hire buys you back 4 or 5 hours a week. You can now spend on the thing that actually grows revenue instead of the thing that just keeps today's clients from leaving. The real unlock at level 3, the one that separates the agencies that hit $50,000 a month from the ones that stall at $15,000 forever, is delegating fulfillment specifically, not admin. Handing off your inbox feels productive. It isn't the bottleneck. The bottleneck is that you're still the only person who can actually build and deliver the AI systems you're selling. Every new client is still routed through your brain, your Sunday nights, your calendar. You hire your first ops person here, sometimes a junior automation builder, sometimes a fractional project manager, and it's expensive in a way that feels irrational the first time you see the number. $3,500 a month for someone to do maybe 60% of what you do. Your margin takes a visible hit the very first month. This is the part where a lot of founders panic and undo the hire, because the P&L looks worse before it looks better, and nobody warned them that buying back your own time shows up as a loss before it shows up as leverage. The ones who push through it stop being the technician and start becoming the manager. That's the actual level up, not more clients. A different job title inside the same business. You go from building the automation to reviewing the automation. From closing the client to training someone else to close the client the way you would. It feels like a demotion for about 6 weeks. It's actually the only door into level 4. Level 4 is $50,000 a month, climbing toward that first $1 million a year, and this is where most agencies discover their entire revenue engine has one point of failure: you. If you stop posting content, stop DMing, stop showing up to every discovery call personally, the pipeline dries up in about 3 weeks. That's not a business. That's a very well-dressed dependency. So level 4 forces you to build something you've never needed before. Systems that generate leads and close deals without your fingerprints on every single one. Outbound that runs on a cadence, not your mood that day. A referral engine where past clients actually get incentivized, not just thanked, to send you the next one. Maybe your first SDR, someone whose entire job is booking calls off a script you wrote once instead of a pitch you reinvent every time. This is also exactly where the cash flow traps show up, and they're sneaky because none of them look like a crisis in the moment. Payroll now hits your account before client payments do, so you're floating salaries on last month's revenue while this month's invoices are still sitting in someone's accounts payable queue. Client churn stops being a minor annoyance and starts being a structural threat, because losing one $8,000 a month retainer at this stage doesn't just hurt, it can wipe out the margin from 3 other clients combined. And margin compression creeps in from a direction nobody expects. The bigger you get, the more you're tempted to discount to win logos that look good, and suddenly you're running $60,000 a month in revenue with the actual profit of a $20,000 a month, because every deal has a little bit of "we'll figure the pricing out later" baked into it. This is precisely why most AI agencies plateau right around the $1 million mark and just sit there, sometimes for years. Not because the market dried up. Because the business was built to run through the founder's personal effort, and personal effort has a ceiling that revenue targets don't respect. You can't outbound your way past your own bandwidth. You can't hire your way out of a pricing structure that was never designed to support a team. Somewhere around here, founders start asking why they're working more hours than they did at $15,000 a month while making less per hour than they did back then, and the honest answer is that they scaled the workload before they scaled the structure underneath it. If any part of this is sounding uncomfortably familiar, this is exactly the stretch of the game where having an actual blueprint saves you months, sometimes years, of expensive trial and error. This week, the book that walks through every one of these levels, hiring order, pricing structure, the exact systems to build before you scale past 6 figures, is discounted. And honestly, this section right here, the hiring and cash flow stretch, is the single most common place I see agency owners quietly bleed out. The link's in the description if you want the shortcut instead of learning it the $40,000 mistake way, which is roughly what a bad first ops hire combined with underpriced retainers costs you by the time you notice. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about level 4. Even if you do everything right, Even if you build the sales system and hire the ops person and fix your margins, you will still hit a wall around $1 million that no amount of hustle solves. The skills that got you here: closing deals personally, managing a small team by feel, keeping every client relationship warm yourself, stop working past a certain size. Not because you got worse at them, because the entire operating model you've been running since level 1 was never designed to hold what you're about to build next. The next level doesn't ask you to work harder or hire faster. It asks you to tear down the machine you just spent 2 years constructing and build a completely different one in its place. Level 5 starts the day your bank balance crosses 7 figures and you realize the org chart you've been running on is basically you at the top, 6 people reporting directly to you, and no actual management layer in between. At $1 million a year, that setup barely survives. At $3 million, it collapses under its own weight because you cannot personally review 40 client deliverables a week and also close new business and also decide whether to fire the underperforming automation builder and also approve everyone's PTO. Something has to give, and if you don't build the structure on purpose, the business will build it for you, badly, in the form of burnout. So you build department heads, a head of delivery who owns quality across every client account instead of you spot checking builds at 11 p.m., a head of sales who runs the pipeline instead of you closing every deal personally, an ops manager who owns hiring, systems, and the internal tooling that keeps 15 people from stepping on each other. These hires run $80,000 to $130,000 a year each, and the first time you see 3 of those salaries hit payroll in the same month, it feels insane because collectively that's more than you paid yourself in your first 2 years combined. But this is the actual mechanism of level 5. You're not buying labor anymore. You're buying yourself out of being the ceiling. A real org chart, boxes and lines, people who own outcomes instead of tasks, is the thing that lets the business scale past the size of your own attention span. The harder problem hiding underneath the org chart is that your quality has been running on 2 or 3 irreplaceable people this whole time, probably including yourself. One senior builder who just gets it and can architect a client's entire AI workflow from a 20-minute call. One account manager who smooths over every crisis because clients trust her personally. That's not a business, that's a dependency wearing a business's clothes, and at level 5, it becomes an existential risk instead of a quirky strength. Because you're now taking on $30,000 and $50,000 a month clients who expect consistency, not hope the right person is available. So you standardize. You document the exact build process, the QA checklist every deliverable runs through before it reaches a client, the escalation path when something breaks, the onboarding sequence that used to live entirely in one person's head. It's unglamorous work, writing 40-page SOPs nobody wants to write, but it's the difference between an agency that survives a star employee quitting and one that loses 3 clients the same week she does. Level 6, the stretch from $5 to $10 million, is where the business model itself has to change, not just the org chart. Custom one-off builds got you here, but custom work doesn't scale, because every new client still requires senior time to scope, architect, and deliver something bespoke. So you productize. You take the last 2 years of client work, find the 80% that's repeatable, and package it into fixed scope tiers with fixed pricing. What used to be a $45,000 custom AI implementation becomes a $7,500 a month subscription with 3 tiers, standardized onboarding, and a delivery timeline that doesn't depend on which builder gets assigned. This is the single biggest lever at this stage because it converts unpredictable project revenue into recurring revenue, and recurring revenue is what makes an agency actually valuable instead of just profitable. A business doing $8 million a year in one-off projects and a business doing $8 million a year in productize retainers look identical on a P&L and get valued completely differently by anyone looking to invest or acquire. This is also where you start running the company on numbers instead of vibes, because at this size, gut feeling stops being a strategy. You build dashboards, gross margin per client, so you can see which accounts are quietly bleeding you dry. Utilization rate, so you know if your delivery team is at 60% capacity or dangerously overbooked at 95%. Customer acquisition cost against lifetime value, so you stop celebrating a new logo that costs more to land than it'll ever pay back. Weekly ops reviews with actual KPIs on a screen instead of a Slack channel full of good vibes and fire emojis. It feels like overkill the first few months. It stops feeling like overkill the first time a dashboard flags a client segment losing money 3 weeks before it would have shown up in your bank account. Here's the expensive mistake that hits almost everyone somewhere in this exact stretch: scaling headcount faster than the systems that support it. You land 3 new $40,000 a month clients in the same quarter, so you hire 6 people to service them, fast, because the revenue is sitting right there, and it feels reckless not to. But hiring outpaces onboarding. Onboarding outpaces documentation, and 4 months later you look at your P&L and your revenue has grown 60%, while your margin has quietly dropped from 38% to 19%, and nobody can point to the exact moment it happened because it happened in a dozen small decisions instead of one big one. This is margin collapse, and it's the quiet killer of $5 to $10 million agencies because revenue growth masks it for months. You feel like you're winning right up until the quarter you realize you're now running a bigger, more stressful version of the same business, just with less money left over at the end of it. Somewhere in this stretch, you also hit the fork that shapes everything after. Reinvest every dollar back into the business and grow organically, or take outside capital to accelerate faster than cash flow alone allows. Neither is automatically correct. Bootstrap reinvestment keeps you in full control but caps your speed to whatever your margins can fund. A seed or growth round buys speed and firepower, but means answering to people who now have a say in decisions you used to make alone in your kitchen at midnight. This decision, more than almost anything else in the entire build, determines whether you spend the next phase scaling aggressively toward $100 million or positioning quietly for acquisition, because buyers and investors are looking for exactly the things level 5 and 6 force you to build: clean recurring revenue, documented systems, a management layer that doesn't collapse if you take a 2-week vacation, and margins that don't fall apart the moment growth speeds up. If any of this is landing a little too close to home, the book covers the exact hiring sequence and productization framework that gets agencies through the stretch without the margin collapse, and it's discounted this week. Links in the description. Because the mistake sitting inside this exact level, hiring ahead of your systems, doesn't show up on the P&L for 3 or 4 months. By the time you see it, it's usually already cost 6 figures in wasted payroll and shredded margin, and the business that looked unstoppable at $7 million a year is suddenly bleeding out in a way nobody flagged until it was already expensive to fix. Level 7 starts the day $10 million a year stops feeling like the ceiling and starts feeling like the floor, and the business in front of you doesn't look anything like the agency you built in level 5. At this altitude, you're not managing clients anymore. You're not even really managing an agency. You're managing a portfolio of things that each generate revenue, and your job has quietly become deciding which of them deserves more capital, more headcount, and more of your attention this quarter. This is where multiple business units show up. The core agency, the one doing productized AI implementation retainers you built out in level 6, keeps running, but now it's joined by a white label arm servicing other agencies who want to offer AI automation under their own name without building the delivery infrastructure themselves. You charge them wholesale, they charge their clients retail, and suddenly you've got a second revenue line that scales without you touching a single client relationship. Some operators take it further and franchise the model outright, licensing your SOPs, your training, your delivery playbook to operators in other markets or other niches for a franchise fee plus royalties. The same logic McDonald's runs on, except instead of burgers, you're franchising an AI onboarding sequence and a QA checklist that took you 4 years to get right. Either path does the same job. It turns your original agency from the entire business into just one division of a larger machine. None of that works, though, if you're still the bottleneck. And here's the uncomfortable truth about level 7 that nobody tells you at level 3 when you're thrilled to finally have a head of delivery. The org chart you built to get from $1 to $10 million was designed around you being at the top of it, making the final call on everything that mattered. At $30 million, $50 million, $80 million, that structure breaks in a completely different way than it broke at $3 million. It's not that you're overwhelmed with tasks anymore. Your department heads absorbed that years ago. It's that the business literally cannot grow past the size of your personal decision-making bandwidth, and if every strategic call, every acquisition, every new market, every pricing shift still runs through you personally, you've built a company that's capped at exactly your capacity to think about it. So you build an actual leadership layer above the department heads. A CEO or a president who isn't you, someone whose entire job is running the operating rhythm of the company day to day, while you move into a chairman or founder role that's about capital allocation and long-term direction instead of Tuesday morning fire drills. This is the single hardest hire of the entire journey, harder than the first salesperson, harder than the first head of delivery, because it means handing someone the keys to a company you built with your own hands and trusting they'll run it without you in the room. Companies that never make this hire hit a growth ceiling somewhere between $15 million and $25 million and just sit there, profitable but stuck, because the founder becomes the limiting reagent in every reaction the business tries to run. Once that leadership layer exists, 3 doors open at the same time, and which one you walk through changes the rest of your life. Door 1 is the PE roll-up. Private equity firms have been buying up agencies and consolidating them for the exact recurring revenue. Documented systems reasons that made you build all that infrastructure back in level 6, and a business doing $10 million plus in EBITDA with clean books, and a management team that doesn't need you personally can command a real multiple, sometimes 4 times to 8 times EBITDA depending on growth rate and how sticky your revenue is. Door 2 is a straight acquisition offer, usually from a larger player in your space or an adjacent one who wants your client base, your team, or your white label infrastructure more than they want to build it themselves, and those conversations start showing up in your inbox the moment your revenue crosses the threshold where you're no longer a competitor they can ignore. Door 3 is the one almost nobody warns you about, which is that you don't sell at all. You use the leadership layer and the capital you've built to go acquire other agencies, roll them into your operating system, standardize their delivery under your SOPs, and build an actual empire, 5, 10, 15 agencies under one holding company, each one smaller than what you could have built alone, but collectively worth more than any single agency could ever be. All 3 doors are legitimate. The mistake is not deciding on purpose and just drifting toward whichever one shows up first because someone emailed you a term sheet on a Tuesday. And underneath all 3 of those doors is the actual mindset shift that separates the operators who make it to $100 million from the ones who stall out at $20 million feeling vaguely unsatisfied. You stop thinking like an agency owner and start thinking like an AI holding company operator. An agency owner asks, how do I get better at delivering this service? A holding company operator asks, which businesses, built around which AI capabilities, deserve my capital this year, and which ones do I sunset or sell because they're not worth the attention anymore? It's a completely different question, and it's the reason the founders who get stuck at level 6 forever are usually the ones who never stopped optimizing the thing they already built instead of asking what else that infrastructure could be pointed at. Here's the summary, because 7 levels is a lot to hold in your head at once. None of these stages are optional, and none of them are skippable, no matter how tempting it looks from 3 levels behind. Skip the systemization in level 2 and you'll pay for it in level 4 when you can't hire past yourself. Skip the org chart in level 5 and you'll pay for it in margin collapse by level 6. Skip building real leadership in level 7 and you'll pay for it by sitting at $18 million a year for a decade, technically successful, personally trapped, wondering why the business that was supposed to buy you freedom just bought you a bigger job. And the mistake sitting specifically inside this level, the one that costs founders the most money of anywhere in the entire journey, is selling too early to the wrong buyer because you never built the leadership layer. So the business was worth 40% less than it should have been the day you finally got tired enough to take an offer. That gap doesn't show up on any dashboard. It shows up 7 figures later on a wire transfer you can never renegotiate. The book breaks down exactly how to structure that leadership transition and time your exit so you're never the reason your own company gets discounted, and it's on sale this week. Links in the description.